Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest today is Kris Johns, founder and CEO of AdGood, and somebody whose career sits right at the intersection of innovation, media, and impact. Kris has spent more than 15 years helping shape the streaming and ad tech world, building platforms and businesses that transformed how audiences discover content and how companies create growth. He helped scale AdPool into one of the world's largest CTV marketplaces, played a major role at Whirl before its acquisition by AppLovin, and was part of the growth story at Maker Studios before Disney came calling. But what really grabbed my attention is what Kris decided to do next. Because after helping build businesses and scale technology, he looked at something most people barely noticed: unused advertising inventory, and saw something entirely different. He saw potential. He saw opportunity, and he saw a way to turn empty ad space into something that could actually help change lives. Today, through AdGood, Kris is helping nonprofits across the power of connected TV and giving organizations that normally wouldn't have a seat at the table a much bigger voice. Kris Johns, we met at Possible probably a month ago at the time of recording this. It is great to see you again, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Absolutely. Really good conversation at Possible. I knew within 30 seconds, I got to get this guy on. So here we go. So you've spent years on scaling, building, streaming TV, CTV, ad tech, and so on and so on. But AdGood feels like a different kind of chapter. So I want to start with that. Give us the story behind it. And was there a moment or moments that you said, I need to build this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all started, I'm a big blood donor and, donating blood locally here in where I live. And a lot of the times I go and there's just never anybody in there donating blood. There's just a huge capacity problem kind of happening there. And being in the space that I was in formerly, I knew that there was a large percentage of inventory that goes unfilled for streaming. So more or less kind of putting those two pieces together, looking into how the donated media model works, how people can access donated media and how difficult it is, and also thinking about the full scale of how many nonprofits actually exist out there. And of those that do exist, the 1.9 million, just a small percentage actually even get access to this level of inventory that's donated. And so the more I dug in, the more I realized that there should be a much easier, more democratized access so that all nonprofits can really dive in there and get it in a simple, easy way. And it can accommodate, nonprofits of all sizes, both large and small. So they can connect even if they don't have creative and don't know how to run media and don't know what the different pieces are that they need to do to be able to execute. I wanted to create a scenario that was simple, easy, and affordable for them to get the power of TV and what it can do. Both the biggest brands and the biggest nonprofits that exist, a lot of them were started on TV.
So is this open to, just any nonprofit? What's the parameters?
Yeah, the only parameters are is we don't do anything faith-based and we don't do anything political. Those are the only two kind of pieces that we stay out of. But pretty much, we run the gamut for causes. We run across all the major verticals and have already done so in the past year. We've been able to execute campaigns both at the micro level using our self-serve Gen AI ad manager, where there's even a tiny nonprofit that we work with that's based in Galveston, Texas. They've been running through that and are still consistently running through that platform. And they've seen great returns, so the model proves out no matter what the scale is. That even that tiny nonprofit saw like a 433% increase in donations and a 200% plus growth in attendance to their events. So even them running small budgets, like I think they started at $250 a month and then they saw so much success from it, they got up to, I think they're up to like $450 towards the end of last year. And they were seeing massive growth. And this is a huge benefit to their small organization, both from an awareness standpoint, so people can actually go there and get, the education for music that they wanted to, as well as them getting additional donations so they can actually grow what they're trying to do and get more impact.
When it comes to CTV, I think a lot of people, when they hear that, very often think of giant brands with giant budgets. Did we somewhere along the way, like accidentally or on purpose, create like a velvet rope, if you will, around this technology?
Well, I think it's always been cost prohibitive. And I also think that it's a connection aspect. Like, where do you even go to get it? I think there's been a big breakdown in that because there's been a big focus on ad managers kind of coming out across CTV. A lot of the big publishers now have that. They're going after kind of SMBs that are out there, all the way down to like pizza parlors and things like that. So our ad manager that we have through partnerships with Streamer and Magnite, we're actually able to access that same great tool that's used for SMBs, but we use it for nonprofits. So it's kind of combines the power of what they've built for SMBs and then the power of our discounted media so the nonprofits get access.
What frustrates you the most about how access to CTV works today?
Well, access in what sense? You mean for nonprofits or just in general?
Yeah. Well, let's just start in general for most of my listeners are not nonprofits. So start there. And then if you want to work more granular.
I think from an access standpoint, smaller businesses can access it, but only through specific locations and specific publishers and things like that, which I don't think is bad. Like they can still get in there if they want to, but if they've never bought in that, then they're never going to know. And they just think TV's unattainable, right? And sometimes they'll call like the local station and they'll get some broadcast, but then they're missing out on all the targeting that could come in. So even sometimes when they get access, it's like, the targeting piece is very important for what they're trying to achieve for their business. Because then if they're hitting the wrong audience, it's just kind of wasted spend in some aspects. So I think that piece, could be a little daunting for any business, any buyer that's never bought it, right? And I think that piece and the lack of education for it and the complexity that I feel like sits on top of it, that it's complex, but it's not that complicated. Where as long as you know your audience, you have your budget. And to be honest, the other big piece is the minimums, right? Like some of these minimum spends could be quite high for, a lot of these different types of buyers.
Yeah. So I know when we talked, one of the things you said was there's an awareness, right? Where used to be a lot of nonprofits could only get like the 2 a.m. slot, when infomercials ran, right?
Yeah,
remember that?
Exactly.
And so I would imagine part of what your company does is educational.
Yeah. So 100%. I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits come to us too, because even the ones that are savvy, they're out there, they're buying a lot of digital paid ads. They're, they have their Google ad grant and they're running a lot of stuff. They have their Meta account set up. They're running ads in that platform. But unfortunately, they've kind of hit this plateau where even if they put a lot of spend in, they're only getting very incremental, small amounts of growth. And so now they're looking for new channels to kind of bring more top of funnel in and get more people transacting at some of these other destinations. And so that's where we'll get a lot of nonprofits reaching out to us and getting access. And then they realize, oh, this is just like digital. We can do this. This is great. But a lot of it for them is getting access because they don't know where to go. The minimums are too high. And I think there's a trust piece too. The fact that we're a nonprofit kind of trying to build out this platform for other nonprofits, right? That's hopefully here long after we're all gone, right? Like we want this to be something that's much more than like come to AdGood because we're discounted media for all nonprofits. We're much more than that. We're trying to build something that's sustainable and there for the entire nonprofit community so that even the smaller nonprofits can get access to what has made some of the larger nonprofits so powerful and grow so quickly.
Yeah, I would imagine there's so many nonprofits who are on the smaller side thinking, oh, yeah, I mean, well, we don't have the budget that XYZ does, so we can't possibly run. And you're sitting there in the corner going, wait a minute. Yeah, you can. So to me, it's a good challenge to have to say, no, you can. Here's how.
Exactly. And, we're doing other things too. We work with a lot of different partners, to be able to show attribution. And, we do lift studies for free through one of our partners. And so we're trying to build out the data component as much as we can so that they can be marketers, right? Because this, even with regular donated media, there's this problem of how can you actually be a marketer when like you get a set amount of inventory and you get whatever reporting you're going to get. And then what if this campaign's doing fantastic and you're seeing it across all your other channels? You can't like go buy that inventory and grow what you were doing. You can't put more into that campaign to add more juice to it so that you get the maximum amount that you can. And so there needs to be a lever for these nonprofits so they can go and actually be marketers, right? Because if they can actually go and be marketers, then they can have all this great, technology that exists to be a marketer. And so that's what we want to pretty much give access to. A lot of the partners we work with, we get great rates from, we negotiate that piece, and then we just pass that cost directly onto the nonprofits. Like we don't charge more for that stuff. That's just what it is. We let them know that access is what that access is. And in some cases, give them seats on some of the platforms, et cetera, depending on their savviness and what they need. Some need a
Yeah,
little bit more in holding than others. It really
sure.
just depends. I mean, some of these nonprofits have just like performance shops. I mean, they're great. Like they know what they're doing. They're way more versed than even us in all these different aspects. And so we learn a lot about the ecosystem, how they track things, and the data components that they're looking at. And it gets really quite interesting. And we love those partners because the more we can work with them and optimize, then we can kind of pass that knowledge in a simple way on to the other nonprofits that we work with that aren't as savvy.
Yeah. Holistically speaking, I think every industry has a dashboard problem, as I call it. But especially nonprofits, they don't need more dashboards. Not that anybody does, but they need simplicity, right? And I want to get into how important it was for you to remove complexity, really, and build something that feels just very usable versus more than just powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a blend of the partnerships, right? Kind of streamlining and getting partnerships that we know will work best for what the nonprofits are trying to do. And having a self-serve tool that has the data pieces that they need in there, I think was a huge component as well. And as we kind of continued to grow, we've realized like some of the platforms weren't working as good as the other ones. And we've kind of had to sunset those and move on to other ones. So we're kind of learning as we go too, based on what their needs are. And we're constantly evolving. And so that's just an ongoing piece. But a lot of the same things that we look at and what we hear from the nonprofits, even the really savvy ones, everything we're doing is really kind of helping them to achieve their goal or what they're trying to get to as far as understanding. Because TV itself isn't clickable. And a lot of the way that they do their performance marketing is heavily click-based attribution and things like that. And so they want to be able to look at this top of funnel and then see how it's attributed across the growth for all their conversion channels, like their paid ads, their organic, their meta, whatever they're running for social, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I talk to CMOs all the time and they're overwhelmed or consumed with dashboard after dashboard, right? The data, the analytics. And half the time, they tell me like my team just sits there staring at charts, and to have that, and especially in a nonprofit where presumably they don't have as much of a marketing budget as a non-nonprofit, stay with me, has, the need for simplicity is just so paramount.
Yeah, it is. And we're able to work with the nonprofits or their agencies as well. We work with a lot of agencies. So depending on how and what data they need, we also do all kinds of stuff around like flat file delivery so that we can actually work into whatever dashboards they're using for visualizations of their data. We do that with a couple different partners. And we've recently just set up our whole kind of data platform here so that we can better accommodate those specific needs. We don't see that as much with the smaller nonprofits, obviously, but
right.
Our reporting that we do for a lot of our managed services, it's pretty simple stuff. But one of the interesting things, because you mentioned about day part, we actually added impressions by time of day to our standard reporting just to help the nonprofits understand and see specifically, like, you're not just running in the middle of the night, like you're getting prime time, you're getting everything. And we actually allow them to also day part target so they can target specific day parts, whatever they need. Like we're able to accommodate all those things.
I love that. And clearly I just can hear, wait, I can do that? I can target like the big guys do? Yeah.
Yeah. And we target all the way down to the zip code. We can do any sort of geo. And we do a lot of things too, where sometimes nonprofits will come in and say, we want to target, a specific state and specific kind of income levels and things like that. And we'll, see the price of the targeting, depending on if their budget's not huge. We're like, okay, well, it's going to add, $1 CPM because of the targeting from the third party source that we're getting it from. But there's scenarios where we can look at the census data for that specific state, and we look at what the income levels per zip code, and then we'll do geo-targeting for them because it's a highly reduced cost for them to do that. And be able to target those specific zip codes. So there's a lot of interesting ways that we've been doing to kind of adjust what we're doing on the targeting front for lowering costs for the nonprofits and still providing good return, right? Like they're still seeing great success. And we've done tests on those same cases where we have the targeting and then we kind of did it our way, where we look at the zip codes and the income levels from the different census data that we get. And we've been able to actually see a lot of the same returns. Obviously, this was just across a few states. They weren't national campaigns,
right?
But, we typically could do that across the U.S. as well.
I know something you're very passionate about, which I love too, is purpose-driven advertising.
Yes.
Right. I kind of want to start this little topic about, how does Kris Johns define that term?
Purpose-driven advertising? I mean, it's really just cause-based, right? Like social good. Like, how are you trying to be good and help your community, or good and just help humans or animals, or there's, the environment, like anything out there, just trying to make the world a better place. Like, that's really how I look at it.
Okay.
So it's actually saving lives,
Yep. Changing lives. Yeah.
changing lives, educating, all these things
Mhm.
just really help people and or animals or the world, right?
Inherent in that is the word trust, right? How do you think about trust when it comes to purpose-driven advertising?
So I think TV itself is probably the best channel to build trust with an audience. People sit down with their families or by themselves to watch specific types of content that they love. It's long form content. People are engaged, they're committed, they're watching this content. And having your nonprofit and cause alongside that content just helps the viewer understand, that your brand can be trusted. Like this is just something it's just inherent, right? Like anything that's on TV. I mean, ever since I was a kid, like something's on TV, it was like this big deal. There's still elements of that I think that exist. And I still think there's this power of what television can do. It's the biggest screen in the home. It's the most engaging thing that you can see in a home. And I think, when you tie that into what you're doing for a bigger campaign, like that's where all these things come in. Because when you think about these other channels, like social and, some of these paid banner ads and things like that, like there's a trust problem out there, right? I mean, it's a known thing, that it's
Yeah.
scale, but there's a trust problem. And TV helps build that trust and helps all those other channels convert. Some of the best growth that we've seen is when you mix social with TV. If you have big TV campaigns going, then you're running a bunch of social because that's where people are engaging. The conversion levels increase, incredibly.
It's fascinating, right? From a human nature perspective, because as you're saying this, the first thing I'm thinking of, well, is it because TV's been around the longest and there's that inherent trust?
I think so.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe it's like generational and it's passed down, but there's just something about it. Like the TV goes on and it just kind of looks at it. It's like, everybody faces their sofa. Everybody, what else do you point your furniture at that you look there? Right. It's like fire and TV, it's like, these are the things.
Good point.
You know,
point it at the oven or the refrigerator.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, there's just something inherently about that. It's, that co-viewing with your family, like it's a thing, like family movie night. Like there's all these things. There's not like family refrigerator night or, any of these other things that you have in your home.
Maybe you'll start a new trend, but I doubt it.
Well, we actually just activated some inventory from one of our partners, Samsung, and it's actually, they have a viewing experience on their refrigerators. So we've actually just started running some ads there, which is interesting.
Interesting. But it's still in a TV space kind of thing. Yeah, I get it.
Well, it's a screen on a
screen. Right.
But
right. That's really interesting stuff because TV just and you're spot on with. Excuse me. If you're going to do social, add it onto TV. Don't just do social.
Yeah, I mean it's like the two together, right? I don't think any of these nonprofits are ever going to not do social. Like it's a very powerful thing for them, and you want to continue that engagement. But to attain new audience and to help convert those people that are like, I'm not quite sure. Or just to remind them to go back about the importance of what their causes are, right? Like, and what they're doing and how they impact, especially at a local level. Like the smaller local nonprofits, like, they just miss out on so many dollars because they could be helping during a disaster, all kinds of things, but they're not going to get a big chunk of money. They're not going to get the money that they need. That actually goes a lot further with them because typically they're just not able to kind of get access to the audience.
Yeah. When I was going over the notes for this, and some of the things we wanted to talk about, and I know one of the things was the following. I'm just going to read it verbatim. It was purpose-driven campaigns deserve Fortune 500 technology. What did you mean by that?
I just mean that there needs to be a level playing ground, right? Like nonprofits of all sizes should be able to get the same access to the great media and the great tools and the great technology that even Fortune 500 brands can get access to. And with us, they have that access. They could come to us and spend a $10,000 budget and get access to all the same great components as far as targeting, attribution, lift studies, all these kind of key things. Now, obviously, you want a certain impression level, but they also kind of get that with us because of the price book that we charge. So they actually get a lot of impressions because they're getting 4x what they would get or what the big brands are paying for. And so, yes, 100% they should have that access because, I mean, all these amazing things have been built in ad tech and, it's more than just kind of driving the dollar. I think it's also about what it could do and the massive scale that it can do for social good. It's just, I mean, it does amazing things. Like, why wouldn't it be used for all this stuff? It just
right. Do you think there's kind of an unspoken assumption maybe that, hey, listen, nonprofits should just be grateful for whatever they can get?
I don't know I mean, I think it's hard, right? I think there's a lot of nonprofits. I think it could be hard in some scenarios for companies to work with nonprofits,
Mhm.
small teams, maybe some might be a little bit more disorganized than others. I think marketers at nonprofits at a certain size have a harder time getting budget and approval for things and how they have to kind of chase up sometimes all the way to the board level and educate all the way up those channels. So,
Yep.
it's hard, I think. I think everybody wants to do good. And I can say that all of our partners love us because they look at us as in some ways like an aggregation platform of nonprofits so that they can actually do good at a massive scale without having to kind of put the manpower in to be able to go out and you work with as many nonprofits as possible. Because that
Yeah.
would take a whole staff for them to do it, right? And so we're kind of trying to build that up and do as much as we can so that they can make a massive impact because they all want to do good. It's just hard, they're crunching, trying to make revenue. They got their own kind of things to do, right?
Yep.
Their own
Yep.
problems to fix. And, they love the fact that they just kind of work with us and we're able to send them all this, nonprofit demand. And it's all the way down to the local level. And like that's fantastic. Like you'd be sitting in a small town in Texas and seeing like a local nonprofit that's down the street.
Yep.
I mean, that's fantastic, especially when you're watching content on a platform that you love. And it's good for the brand. It's good association. It helps, so that they're not seeing ad slate. Like nobody wants to see, we'll be right back, moments of Zen, like all this good stuff. Like nobody wants to see those ad slate
No.
ads.
No.
And, interesting enough, we have very high completion rates on all of our ads. Like we see anywhere between 98 and 99% completion rates on most of our ads across the board on average. And so it's very high completion rates for us, which is interesting because I think people just genuinely watch nonprofit ads.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when people hear words like social impact and purpose driven, they immediately think of stories and emotion, which of course matter. But I know you're very much a data and performance guy, right?
Yeah.
So how do you measure whether these campaigns, if you will, are working?
Well, it boils down to the growth, right? Like how you look at across the channels, what sort of additional growth are they seeing across all their different channels? Like we mentioned, for what they're doing with paid media, what they're doing with social, all that good stuff. Like what has that growth been, week over week, year over year? What day over day, even like, it just really depends on those pieces. But one thing that you were mentioning too, is like, you also kind of have to look at the creative and the performance of the creative. Just because you're tracking things in a good way doesn't mean, especially in nonprofit ads, like the story is so important and the quality of like how they're telling their story and what they do is just massively, massively important. And we do see in a lot of occasions that longer form creative, especially for some of these nonprofit campaigns, performance goes up incredibly. Going from like a 30 to a 60, like the growth of, donations, that we hear that a lot of these nonprofits are getting, the growth across all the other channels and the traffic to the site, like all these kind of key things. It's just this repetitive message. It just lives a little bit longer with them. And so that's also interesting too. I mean, we've run stuff all the way up to 120s before.
Okay.
That's a long ad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's put your prognostication hat on for a second about the future of advertising and social impact. 3 to 5 years ahead, what do you hope changes in the advertising world?
So I think over time, honestly, with the buyer and seller agents, like everything's just going to get so fine tuned and, everything's going to run at such an optimum level that there's going to be very little to be able to kind of grow, right? For these brands to grow. And so I think, honestly, there's going to be an efficiency level that we get to, that the only way that we're going to be able to actually get big jumps in growth for performance that they're looking for is to actually add the humanity back into kind of what's happening. And so I think that's where purpose is going to come in. I think more brands are going to want to programmatically act at scale and work with nonprofits at scale programmatically, all in the same ecosystem. So the percentages of their budgets go into certain things where they can co-brand and work with different and be able to scale and continue to buy as they're buying, but allocating percentages of their budgets to social good campaigns that both, that align with what the brand's trying to do. So I think it's going to be a blend of efficiency and, now that we've gotten really efficient, people are going to realize, well, now we need to actually add some humanity and some social good into what we're doing and be able to still do that at scale, right? And apply it across all these different tools.
Exactly. You kind of already, I think you looked at my notes here because you answered my next question already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. It was, do you think we eventually reach a point where social impact isn't like a category anymore? It just simply becomes part of how brands operate.
I mean, that's how I see it. And my vision of what we're trying to do is we want to make it as easy as possible for them to do so. We want it to be everywhere they're already buying and everywhere they're already, doing any of these specific types of tasks or tracking their data. The easier you make it, the more social good you can do. Because it's not a factor if people don't want to do it. It's just a factor of the lift. And if the lift is easy and if we have to bear the burden, that's fine. Because I think at the end of the day, we all get the reward as people, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really that simple, right?
Yes. I mean, the technology's there. That's the thing, right? It's, we're not building anything special here. We're just doing it in a very unique manner and really just trying to do good and make it easy for others to do good. That's really it.
Yeah. All right. We're going to end it like I do most of my episodes. It's the random 5. If you've heard any of my shows, I'm going to ask you 5 personal questions.
Okay.
And I picked these very much at random. And here we go. What was your very first job and what did it teach you that somehow still follows you around today?
My first job, I scooped ice cream at Baskin-Robbins.
Okay. All right, other than scooping techniques, was there anything that still follows you?
It still follows me today. Show up to work on time. Definitely.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, next. What would 16-year-old Kris think if he saw your life right now?
He'd say, you have a lot of kids. What were you thinking? I'm sure he would say that.
I think most 16-year-olds would say that, kind of thing.
What are you doing? Yeah.
What are you doing? You're a kid yourself. What are you thinking? Okay. What's one thing on your bucket list that you still haven't done?
That I still haven't done? I don't know. Actually, that's a good one. I've never been to Japan. I always wanted to go to Japan.
There you go. Okay. There you go. Okay. What's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Most spontaneous thing I ever did. When I went to grad school and I got into grad school, I'd never been to New York. And so I was like, I want to go to New York. Never been there. The first time I ever went was the weekend before I moved. And I went there, got an apartment, and then flew back the next weekend. So that was kind of like, okay, I guess I'm moving, And so that was pretty spontaneous for me. Because I applied to a few schools and I ended up getting into all of them. And then that one, I was like, okay, this is definitely going to be the greatest. So moving to New York was definitely pretty fun.
All right, last question. And it's a perfect way to end it because we were talking about TV. You're watching TV, you're flipping channels. What's the movie, no matter how many times you saw it, you stop?
Let me try to think. I would say, I don't know why, I guess that movie Braveheart's, I feel like it's always on.
Yeah.
It's always on TV. Hey, anytime it's on, I'll always be like, okay, I can get into this. And then I'll watch it.
Even though you probably can quote it.
Yeah. And it's just it's not even like it's my favorite movie, but it's like one of those movies that's like, I don't know. Sure. I guess I'll watch this.
I get it. No, there's no wrong answer, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Kris Johns, you're an absolute treat. I'm so glad we met it possible, and I'm so glad to have you on. Thank you for being a guest.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Steve. I appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.